अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्यया अन्यदा आहुरविद्यया इति शुश्रुमधीराणां येनस्तद्विचचक्षिरे अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्यया अन्यदा आहुरविद्यया इति शुश्रुमधीराणां येनस्तद्विचचक्षिरे. The result of vidya and avidya, knowledge and ignorance, are distinct and different. Anyat is distinct. He uses the word anyat twice. If you read the first line, Anyadevahur vidyaya anyada. So anyat twice he says. So distinct and different. The result of vidya and avidya are distinct and different. Thus have we heard from the wise. Iti shushruma. Thus we have heard. Iti, thus we have heard from the wise. Dhiranam yenastadvi chachakshire. It has been expounded to us. Thus have we heard from the wise who have expounded that truth, that which is referred to the previous mantra, the truth or the Upanishad itself, which has been expounded that to us. So the master in the text is adorning that stance. He's taking the stance of utter humility. He's saying, having declared the most quintessential truth in the mantra, he says, it is not mine. I have heard from the gurus of the past. I am just passing it on. I have no claim on it. It's not my opinion. Just to tell you, it is the truth which has been passed on. So you may differ with me, but don't differ with the truth which has been passed on. It is the parampara, and I'm just insignificant spoke in that wheel which has been passing on this wisdom. So the wise people have declared this. What have they declared? That vidya and avidya are distinct and different. So there are two interpretations we are giving, just to give us the depth of it. The first interpretation of avidya. So any pursuit, any worldly pursuit, any pursuit of the world, any terrestrial pursuit, you devolve. Straightforward. If you are pursuing the world, you devolve. Devolve in the sense you accumulate vasanas and desires. Any worldly activity, you accumulate vasanas, you accumulate desires, you are bound to the cycle of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Then what? Again punarapi jananam. So this cycle of birth and death binds one who is pursuing the world. These people devolve. That's the first interpretation of avidya. Now, what is vidya? Vidya is nothing but the pursuit of the higher, the self, the truth, the transcendental. One who pursues the God, pursues the self, he evolves. How do you evolve? Evolve because when you seek the higher, the lower drops off. So because of your attunement and attachment to the higher, the lower worldly desires in quantum, the quantity of your lower desires drop off. So you don't You are free from worldly vasanas and desires. The binding of the world doesn't exist. So sooner or later, you will be liberated. You will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Because as we understand, what confines you to the cycle of birth and death is your vasanas. Since you have got rid of the vasanas, you will be soon liberated. So this is the first interpretation of avidya and vidya. You will know why I'm pausing very soon. See, I said two statements, Ahmed. Our Ashama has been writing. So I was waiting when she finishes to write, then I ask her what she's written. Ashama? No, at least can you repeat what I said? The first interpretation of avidya and vidya. What have you understood? Or what did you jot down? Could you unmute, please, ma? Yes.
I just jotted down one last sentence, Guruji, what came to my mind. Once we get rid of our vasanas, stroke desires, it is easier to get attached to the higher. The distinct difference between avidya and vidya.
Right. So, but the first interpretation of avidya is, what do you understand of that? What did you write down? Did you jot down anything to? Okay. Now, just to differentiate, to ensure the comparison, first interpretation we said, any attachment to the world, one who worships the world, he is bound because he accumulates desires and vasanas. They are bound to the cycle of birth and death. Such people devolve. That is the first interpretation of avidya. Right. The first interpretation of vidya is those who worship the truth, the self. They are liberated because not only do they burn off the existing desires and vasanas, they also don't acquire fresh vasanas. So sooner or later, they will be liberated from this cycle of the vicious cycle of birth and death. All right, ma? Huh? Perfect. That is what we written. Perfect. Now, moving on. The second interpretation of, because the mantra is distinct and different, therefore we must differentiate. The second interpretation of avidya, any activity, whether be it worldly or the spiritual pursuits, any worldly activity, including the spiritual activities, spiritual pursuits, which is the karma, bhakti, jnanam, when they are taken as an end in itself, that is avidya. Any worldly activity, including your spiritual pursuits of karma, bhakti, and jnanam, when they are taken as an end in itself, is avidya. vis-a-vis those people who seek, whether be it limited or absolute, vis-a-vis. Second interpretation of vidya is whether you seek limited or absolute goals, you pursue them as a means to an end. You do not develop any attachment to the path. You get into it only to get out of it. Such people are pursuing vidya. Simple, easy to understand. Should not be difficult. The mantra says distinct and different. This has been handed down from time to time. So are we clarifying what has been passed on? We shall hear from the official summarizer before we conclude.
That's a very difficult task, Guruji.
Sir, how do you think I thought of you, sir? I didn't even say.
I was unmuted automatically, so I don't know why.
So
who did that?
So everybody knows that then, huh? Okay. So title is sealed, sir, now.
Okay, sir. So let me try my best. So I think starting from verse 9, we went to 10, and basically.
Could you, sir, can I request you to just only summarize the two interpretations, please, for me?
Oh, acha, this last interpretation. Okay.
Yes, please. So this becomes clear.
Okay. So avidya, basically, so we're talking of avidya and vidya, the two interpretations. And avidya interpretation, number one, is that any terrestrial pursuit you do, you devolve. You accumulate vasanas and desires through that, and you get bound to the cycle of birth and death. That is point number one in avidya. And the corresponding point on vidya, if you make a tabulation, the corresponding point on vidya is that it is pursuit of transcendental, which is higher purpose, and that will make you evolve. Okay, that the difference between devolve and evolve, between the two. When you seek higher, the lower worldly desires drop in quantum. Binding of world does not exist. Okay, you don't get bound to the world. You will be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So that is vidya. Okay, and so these are the first points. Then the second point is in avidya, any worldly activity, worldly or spiritual pursuits, when they are taken as an end in itself, that is avidya. And vidya is those who seek.
Sorry, what does it mean as an end in itself? Means, what does it mean?
That means you get bound to the process, you get bound to the path, and not about the end result. I hope I'm correct.
Yes. Yes. See, sir, what we are only saying there as an end in itself means you don't understand the purpose of that action.
Right, right.
Any action has an objective or a purpose. So when you get into the action and you fail to realize its purpose, then it's an end in itself.
Yeah, right. So you,
for example, even marriage. So if you take example of a marriage, it's a very auspicious relationship. There's nothing wrong in getting into that relationship of marriage, but it's very difficult for me to think or conceive anyone who is totally detached to marriage. So when would you be detached to it? When you understand marriage is a means to an end. So what is the end of marriage? What is its purpose? It serves a purpose. When I don't understand its purpose, then I get stuck to the marriage itself, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Just taking an example, marriage is an example. So any activity for that matter, whether it be worldly or spiritual.
Yeah.
Hmm?
So you don't understand the purpose and you get attached to the process itself, and then we take the process as the end itself. Okay.
Correct.
So that is avidya.
Yes, sir.
Vidya, on the other hand, is those who seek, whether limited or absolute, you pursue them as a means to an end. So do not develop any attachment to the path. That is vidya. That means you know that you are, just to put it back to your earlier thing, that you are passing through a tunnel to reach a destination, but you don't get attached to the tunnel itself. So that is the.
Yes, sir.
Vidya.
Perfect. Any brief takeaways from 9? I know you are attempting to do that as well. Any salient points?
I think 9 deals with basically detachment, and you have given us the summary this morning that whatever you do in life, cultivate an attitude of detachment to it while doing your dharma towards it. The joy derived from worldly affairs is much lower than the joy you get while working for the higher cause. And yes, sir, I think those are the 2 points which I have. Basically, it is about getting attached or practicing detachment, even whether it is for worldly things or for the spiritual pursuits.
Yeah. Perfect. So the tempo is set by practicing detachment to your daily transactions, to worldly transactions, and then carry the tempo into the spiritual path as well.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Right. A fabulous mantra, very significant, very unique. It doesn't appear anywhere else in the Shastras. So very, very fortunate that we have had this opportunity to go through this mantra in the text. Okay. We shall come back and we'll continue. Okay. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.